Hi guys, good afternoon. Many thanks for joining the SoftCo webinar series. Today is the first of a few that are coming up over the next couple of weeks. I'm just going to get going. We won't keep it too long today. We're hoping to be about 25-30 minutes at the most. Glad to see we have so many attendees online, and I hope everybody is enjoying staying at home and staying safe. So I'm going to kick on and get going. Killian McCarthy is my own name, in charge of sales and marketing with SoftCo, and I have Gareth Pearce on the line also with me, who does a lot of our pre-sales and consulting in our business.
Good afternoon.
Thanks, Gareth. I'm going to just do a quick introduction on SoftCo as an organization. I know we have many customers on the line here and also some companies that we've just started to engage with, and we can take you through that. You'll be familiar with the product that you'll see throughout the presentation because many of you are using it from an AP or a P2P perspective, and some of you are just embracing on projects with us. So just to kick on, you'll know SoftCo Procure to Pay is kind of the core product offering. Procurement, obviously, you'll have many users on the webinar who are familiar with that. AP automation, we do a lot of the invoice processing and invoice approval and integration and matching with the ERPs, and then some analytics and reporting around all the invoice management. Many of you will know we're a Microsoft Gold partner. We host all our applications in the Amazon data centers globally, and we're ISO 27001 data security and management certified. So just going on from that, some customers I suppose that many of you would be familiar with, and one of the reasons we decided to run this webinar series was many of them that we've been speaking to over the last couple of weeks, particularly since we've been in these strange times with COVID-19, have really tried to zone in on contracts and contract management, and everyone is looking at the spend across the business, and we've had many customers ring us and requests about can they store contracts in the application, how do they utilize it, what's the best way for functionality, all of which is there in our contracts management module. It's just that it hasn't been enabled by many people, and given the challenging times that people are looking at their cost and their spend, this is one area we decided to zone in on and to look at and educate some of the customer base and also some of the customers around what you can and can't do within the application. So moving on, as I said, when we would have engaged with many of you, we would have been looking at analyzing spend and automating the invoice process, reducing the costs around the invoice management and procurement process, but ultimately enabling information for the business to get better decisions. What we really want to focus on today is managing and analyzing what spend is going out of the business, given that many businesses are facing difficult times at the moment. And going forward from there, looking at how we reduce and control costs, and contracts are never more important in these difficult times where people are looking at what the obligations are and what methods and reliance people have on looking at renegotiating contracts and terms. One of the key challenges, though, is often trying to find where the contract is and what are the detail and terms within that. So looking at that, we have some customers that are doing CapEx projects or investment in manufacturing facilities that they would have committed to. Many of those projects have slowed down for various reasons, just because of the restrictions being in place globally. In the US, I know we've got some customers that are large manufacturing facilities that all production has stopped in the plants, and then they have had new plants where they have are building new plants, and all that has stopped, and construction has stopped. So those projects, by default, the payments are going to stop on them, and they're looking at do they proceed or where they're at. But the big cost with any business is probably the operational spend or the OPEX spend that people are constantly looking at and seeing where they can delay payment or look at the revised terms, or in some instances look at what's auto-renewing, make sure we've got the renewal date captured, make sure we've got an alert to the right business owner that it might be renewing in 6 months' time, and you're looking to evaluate where you will be in 6 months' time. So rent, subscriptions, many companies are dealing with the likes of all your utility providers, renegotiating terms and cost based on that, and any other cost without the business that's incurring an operational spend is under scrutiny and review at the moment. So looking at contract management, I suppose everyone's saying, look, we have contracts from vendors, partners, customers. Where are they, and what's the life cycle of that contract? 3-year or 5-year term is quite common. So where are you in that process and time right now? Procurement, we've had a few different customers who have come to us and asked us to enable different rules within the application that make sure all spend, irrespective of value, goes for sign-off through a finance director or a financial controller, because they're looking at all spend throughout the business. So we've enabled different rules and logic that would be somewhat different to what was originally in place, that every PO that's raised through the SoftCo application is now sent to on a different route model and a different sign-off process, because scrutiny of spend is under such control. That then links back to the contract, so you're looking to give procurement and the finance team visibility of what the spend is, are the rates correct per contract, is everything according as we expect and as according to plan. While we're reviewing that, it's looking at the dates and the criteria, alerting the relevant people when reviews or actions are needed. Many contracts would have a 90-day break clause or 90-day cancellation, and if you don't notify them within 90 days, it might auto-renew, or many contracts auto-renew just at the end of a year. So it's just to look at all those and go, okay, what's the auto-renew? Should we notify the vendors that we won't be renewing? You usually have to do that in writing. So it's looking at what your obligations are across the business. They sound very obvious and simple things to do. The visibility of where those obligations are, of all the term and renewal status, can be difficult. It's usually embedded down in the middle of a document. The next thing is where is the document? Many of these contract owners would have them sometimes locally on their own desktop, file locally in their own office. And given the fact that many of you on this have many remote locations, contracts can often be held remotely and off-site in different branches. And now that you're in these difficult times of trying to get into the office, it can be difficult to get there and understand what's in the document or understand where it is. Contract performance against that is probably a parallel process and a secondary thing that people haven't really reviewed. It's what we're seeing from a lot of customers is that the contract might be there, but it's not actually being managed and measured against throughout the time. But now when you're looking for review of terms or various things, all of a sudden the contract performance is a very important thing, and seeing where you are year to date on all the various elements. The compliance, the agreement terms, commercials, everyone in the business wants to know that. High up in terms of financial controller, CFO saying what contracts have we got, what's their obligations, what are the terms. And as I said, they're somewhat disconnected from the main business process. And we have had some scenarios where people have said they found the contract, they don't know who signed it, who committed to it. It was in a local office, it was a remote obligation where they're spending maybe somewhat small money, but all the small money is being reviewed now. It's auto-renewed and everyone is wondering, why has that been put in place? It was a local vendor doing a service on equipment that nobody was aware of. It wasn't on the standard contract for all equipment maintenance, or it might be a simple marketing engagement with somebody locally at a branch, but you're on a contract and you're committed to it and you're looking for possibly to reduce that spend, and it's difficult to get your way out of it and you have no visibility that you are committed to it. So when we stood back from it then, we said there's a couple of different contracts that come into a business. So in many cases, somebody gets a contract, it's signed, it can be stored locally in an email, in a desktop, or on a network share or something. What we're proposing is that you would put that contract just simply into the archive. It's just an archive contract. You store it with all the supporting information. You put the status, the contract owner, the next action, i.e. the renewal date, and the contract expiry associated with the contract. We're going to show you just a simple example of that in a moment. Then one on from that is that we might have a contract with invoices. So This contract could be related to a subscription like a Microsoft CRM or any subscription process or rent, or you've got various installments. So I'm signing up to a contract for a 3-year term. Once per quarter, I'm going to get an invoice. The invoice should be for 5K every quarter. When I get the invoice, it needs to be associated with that and validated that the 5K is actually as per the contract installment and it's all up to date. The capital projects can also be, like I said, the budget or the project based. So you might have installment schedules to say it's 25%, there's milestones. Are we being invoiced against the correct milestones? Are the relevant values correct? And are we within tolerance? Sometimes you'll say it's 25 grand up front on a capital project for machinery, and then it's 2 grand a month, but you want to make sure that you're always within tolerance of the various elements. And your last one is very much, I've got a contract, I want to make it available to procurement. I've got engaged legal companies or legal fees to, I've got rates for various different services, and I want to make sure that the rate card is visible to the procurement team and they can look at it. So it's making those documents available at all the right stages, but at any stage somebody in the business can come in and go, where's my contract, what's the next action, where are we at today? I'll have that information at one single touch point for everything I can put my hands on. So going on from that, I suppose we'll insert the document into the archive, and just to take you through all the relevant steps, which we're going to do now momentarily with Garrett, is capturing the document, registering it, assigning installments if it's relevant, what reporting can we get off the contract, what alerts and renewals will we have, do we notify the vendor, do we notify the varied internal people, and what's the whole audit trail on the contract. So I'm going to hand you over to Garrett, and he's going to take you through some of these scenarios here. And some of them are quite simple, but I think the effectiveness is just being able to track and view these contracts simplistically. So Garrett, if you can make yourself presenter, you can take over here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kieran. If you can see my screen there. So I'm going to walk you through, as Kieran said, a few different scenarios. Starting off just very simply, and given the time allowed today, we're just giving you very brief snapshots of the functionality. There's a whole breadth of functionality that we're not really going to get into for time reasons, but we're more than happy to come back to you on an individual basis and get into more depth within the contract module specifically and the broader P2P solution if there's particular areas that are of interest. But for a start, we were just going to show you a very simple example of getting a contract into the system. As Killian said, with everybody working from home, you don't want that bit of paper sitting on somebody's desk or single individual PC. You want to get it into the SoftCo system to be able to have visibility of it to everybody who has appropriate access. So in this case here, I've very simply taken the PDF of a contract, Zoom info, just using the web capture module to insert it. So that's literally just clicking on a link within the SoftCo application. It will prompt me to upload the PDF or the data, or the document rather, and it's just asking me here for particular information. It can derive certain information automatically or default it to, and then it's just looking for me to put in the correct additional information. So what we're doing is we're capturing the document and putting in some additional information about the document that can drive automation of certain things later on. So we just go with, forgive me for my slow typing, but I'm just putting in the start and the end date. Put in the description. Put in, link it to a supplier. So that is linking it up to all the invoices and purchase orders, etc. can all be linked back to the contract in support of that, where that's relevant. If I go down further in here, we've got the contract or reference number here. We can just copy and paste that from the PDF in. And for this contract type, as I said, we're keeping it very simple. We're just going with the type of setting it to archive. So that really is just going to store the document and the information I'm putting in here with it. But we can get far more sophisticated than that, is that we can drive a budget and what we call installment based or pricing agreement type budgets. And that in itself will trigger, first of all, an approval workflow around getting it signed off and getting the installments and the amounts, etc., set up and approved, and then drive the business processes on the back of that. And at the end of the demo, I'm going to show you one that we made earlier in terms of one that has the installments set up that's been approved and all the invoices that have come in against that. But time constraints probably wouldn't allow us to go through the whole process today, but we'll show you the finished product as part of this. The other final piece of information, I'm just putting who my contract owner is, who I want to assign it to, and literally by clicking that save, that's the job done. I've saved the document in, and at that point there, the document will be there, available in the system for any user to access as appropriate. Let's take a moment to go through. So now, if we just take it on to any particular business user who logs in, we have an application with my web connection there. And we'll carry on. So if I log in as the user, first of all, just to point out, an email notification will get sent. So Lisa will get an email to let her know that a new contract has been loaded into the system with her as the owner. So your users are getting made aware of what's out there, what's in the system for them. And now if we log into the system, logging in as user here, the user has access, this particular user has access to all the other modules that make up our system in terms of the procurement, existing orders, AP automation, and vendor management. But this is the module here that we're defaulting into, which is the contracts. And from within here, just as a very basic, you're able to search for your contracts, any contracts that are in there. So if I go in, search for new info, that will bring me back any contracts matching that description, and I can do a very broad search. I can search against the content of the documents. I can search against these very specific criteria. But the key thing we're looking to achieve just by getting it in there is that you as a contract owner, or you as a CFO or financial controller, can get your hands on the documents, and as Killian said, know what that document is committing you to, what the terms of it, etc. are. So if I click into the actual document here, you've immediate visibility throughout the organization to all authorized users of the document itself and the data that we put in when we were setting up the document. So that in itself can put you in a far better sense of control and visibility of what contracts you have, as opposed to relying on documents that are stored in people's local folders or network drives, etc. The other aspects of it are driving activities by the users as required. So you can see here, this user I'm signed in as Lisa. She can see any contracts that have come to her for completion. So that can be in contracts that maybe need some more setup in terms of the installments, the financial values, renewal settings, etc., that need to be captured. You can see here she's got 2 in her contracts for, let me zoom in again. She has 2 that are due for renewal. So this is the system flagging to her that there are 2 contracts coming up for renewal. They've come past their notification date. The contract hasn't expired, but the notification date has come along. And in addition to that notification within the system, she'll also get an email notifying her that she has contracts for renewal. So the system is making you aware proactively of contracts that are coming up for renewal and identifying the opportunities you may have to either renegotiate or go look at a different vendor. So if you just even click into one of these, office rental contract, you can see we've got an expanded view of information here. You can see the lease document. You can see all the key contract data that we would have captured at the start. Right, just scroll that up. You can see this one has financial information associated with it. So you can see we've got the overall value of the contract. We've set up tolerances in terms of what we'll allow from a billing, what deviation for billing we'll allow. This has got renewal reminders set up, so the Lisa will get notified as on the 23rd, which is today. She'll get the notification, which we just saw in my email inbox, to let her know. We can also do things like create a draft renewal if you wish to automatically draft a new copy of the contract for the rollover period, if you like. One other setting just to point out, you can define your billing method. So in this case here, we're expecting to get an invoice in on a monthly basis for this rental contract. That's not always the case. You may very often have contracts that you're expected to pay on a monthly basis, but it's your job to make sure that the direct debit is set up, or that the direct debit payment, or that the funds transfer occurs at the end of every month. So we've come across customers who are using a trace file or a meeting reminder or something to trigger that activity. But here you have the option of setting to invoice or to self-billing. You can use the self-billing option, which will trigger an internal invoice or payment request within the SoftCo system under the AP automation module that will trigger the payment every month and give you visibility from an AP point of view of the fact that that payment is due. A couple other things just to point out. Main thing here, you can attach supporting documents. So we have this little paperclip option here, and we can see we can attach terms and conditions or additional contracts such as the floor plan for the lease, anything that's relevant to the contract, not necessarily the core contract, but supporting documents. Again, they're all stored in one place. They're all retrievable at the click of a mouse, if you like. So that's an example, as I said, example of contracts for renewals and the way the system will notify you. You see another options down here, other views. Lisa will get notified if she's any contracts that she's on the approval path for before they get set up as contracts that invoices can be submitted against. And she can see her active contracts, all the ones that she's the contract owner for. And she can click into here. And I'm just going to drill into one like I was mentioning earlier on, a contract that we've set up. This is an office rental contract. If I click into that, what we can see is obviously, again, like we were looking at a moment ago, the actual rental agreement. You'll see that this particular lease has particular payment plans in terms of monthly rental of $4,000 a month for the first year, an increase in rent for year 2 and year 3. And that was all set up at the time of configuring the contract using this contract installments tab. So we've defined within the SoftCo system an expected invoice each month for $4,000 for the first year, increasing to $4,080 the second year, and $4,160 year 3. And what the system is then able to do in combination with our AP automation module is that as invoices come in referencing that contract, they get matched, and the system links the invoice with the individual installment date, in this case the individual monthly rental payments. And it's doing a couple of things. It's first of all very simply associating the invoice with the expected amount, but it's also applying checks to make sure that you didn't get billed $4,500 for a given month when you were expecting a bill of $4,000. So it's applying the same type of tolerance logic that you would be familiar with if you're using invoice to purchase order matching functionality. So from a financial management point of view, that's locking down and ensuring that you're not getting any unexpected or unwarranted bills from your contracted suppliers within the terms of the contract. And that can then give you further traceability. Then you can link right down from within the contract for a given month. I can go and drill right down and see the particular invoice that we received against that contract. So I can click on the link, and that will bring me over into the accounts payable module, and there's my invoice for February. I've got full traceability and linkability of those financial invoices against the original contract that we set up and approved within the system. So, as I said, that's an example of a contract that has financial implications, and we've been able to set and capture and put rules around that. So from an operational point of view, that's able to drive both the AP department and your procurement team and giving them visibility and control of those contracts on an individual contract basis and individual invoices being received against those contracts. The final thing I'm just going to show you is from probably a higher level, from a procurement manager or CFO type view of the world. If I log in, just some of the reporting that having the contracts in the system and set up can give you. So I'm logged in here as a CFO, for example. We have a reporting module here, and you can start to track things from an operational point of view. You can see your contract accruals, so it can give you visibility of using the installment plan information that it has. It can tell you, well, I'm expecting an invoice for 3 different offices that we're renting in the month of April. It can tell you we haven't received those invoices yet, but because you've defined the installment plan, you have visibility, or you have knowledge that you need to accrue for those 3 rental invoices, rather than having to go through maybe a very manual process to try and figure out what have we paid, what have we been invoiced for this month against our rental contracts. That's all out of the box information that's there. You can analyze your contracts then in a number of ways, in terms of contracts by approver, by supplier, and see where there might have been excessive charges, whether that's within the contract or additional maintenance charges that you need to account for. And the final one I'll just use as an example to click in and show you is contracts by expiry date and value. So this is your road ahead. This gives you visibility of contracts by expiry date and value. So I can see that in June, for my Carter Inc. division, I have contracts expiring with the current value of €53,000. Oh, excuse me, sorry. So that can be a trigger for me to see there's an opportunity for maybe putting something out to tender or renegotiating with a particular vendor because that contract is due. If I want to see what contracts are behind this, I can literally just click through and drill through into the particular contract. I can click here. This is my Manchester office rental is due for renewal in July, so that's flagging it to me. So there's something that can sometimes get lost in the mix of paper and manual storage of your contracts, that you miss those opportunities unless you're paying very close attention to what you've committed to, unless you have an office manager who's on the ball paying attention to that. Instead, the SoftCo system will manage that for you and notify you when the opportunity arises for the contract to be renewed or to be put out to tender. So, as I said, we just wanted to give you a few highlights of the functionality within the system. So we kind of jumped in and out of a couple of different areas in today's section, but we'd be delighted to jump in more detail on an individual basis if you wanted to follow up with a follow-up dedicated web meeting on this. What I might do now is I'll just hand back to Killian, and while I do that, there is a questions tab on the webinar control, so you can, if you want to submit any questions you may have on that, we'll try and answer them either within the context of this webinar, or we can come back to you afterwards if we don't have the answer for you today.
Okay, Gareth, thanks very much. I was glad to hear your dog is in firm approval of the whole demo as well.
Hopefully in no danger.
Okay. I have a question coming in here, just people asking about, is it difficult to turn on the contract management if you're an existing AP user? So simple answer, I won't name you on the question here. It's relatively straightforward. We have to turn on the archive module will be automatically enabled as we stand. And then what you do is you just enable the contract workflow around that. So I can contact you directly, but it's a single number of days to turn it on and configure it. Any other questions? Just conscious of time, I know we said we'd keep you for a half an hour. So we're just coming right up to that. If you do have any questions, everyone has our contact details from the webinar. Feel free to contact us directly, and we can go from there.